down to the final 5 minutes. Trailing, facing the ghosts of 1986, the shadow of a war that still hasn't healed, and a 3 Lions side 1 win from history. And then Lionel Messi did what Lionel Messi does. In 4 unthinkable minutes, Argentina didn't just save their World Cup, they buried England's dream all over again. Stick with us for the full story of the most emotionally brutal 90-plus minutes of this entire tournament. The goals, the collapse, the comeback, and everything that came before it. Hit follow now so you don't miss part 2, where it all comes to a head. Wednesday, July the 15th, 2026, Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. A World Cup semifinal that had been circled on calendars from the moment the draw paired these two nations together, not just for the football, but for everything the football sits on top of. Argentina and England don't meet often. 21 years since their last meeting on any pitch. Nearly 3 decades since they last collided in a World Cup knockout match back in 1998. A game still remembered for a moment of individual brilliance and a red card that shaped a nation's football folklore. But the history between these two runs far deeper than results on a score sheet. It runs through 1,986 and a goal scored partly with a hand and partly with genius. It runs through 1,982 and a war fought an ocean away from either team's home turf, one that still shapes how each nation talks about the other. Whatever happened on the pitch tonight was always going to be measured against that weight. Football historians have long debated why this particular fixture carries more emotional charge than almost any other in the sport. Part of it is pure footballing pedigree, 2 nations with a combined 5 World Cup titles between them, both boasting some of the most decorated club competitions on the planet. But the deeper part of it has nothing to do with football at all. It has to do with a conflict fought over a set of islands in the South Atlantic, one that cost hundreds of lives on both sides and that remains, more than 4 decades later, a live diplomatic issue between the two governments. Every time these teams meet, that history gets dragged back into the conversation, whether either federation wants it there or not. The pre-match noise reflected it. In the days leading up to kickoff, Argentina's vice president stoked tensions further with inflammatory comments aimed at England on social media, invoking the war, invoking Diego Maradona, invoking everything this fixture has come to represent for a generation of Argentine supporters. FIFA and local security officials reportedly treated this as the highest risk match of the entire tournament. Fans from both nations arrived hours early, filling the stadium approaches with chants long before kickoff, Argentine's sky blue and white far outnumbering England's white and red inside the stadium itself. Organizers went as far as separating the 2 supporter bases at opposite ends of the stadium, funneling them through entirely different entrances, a level of precaution rarely seen even at matches with genuine hooligan histories attached. For England, this represented a chance to erase decades of near misses, a first World Cup final appearance since the famous triumph of 1,966 60 years of waiting, of quarterfinal exits and penalty shootout heartbreaks, of a golden generation after golden generation falling just short. Head coach Thomas Tuchel had assembled a squad built around the deep partnership of Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham, 2 players entering the peak of their international careers, both hungry to finally deliver the trophy that had eluded every England side since their grandfather's generation lifted it at Wembley. This English core had already tasted heartbreak on the biggest stages. Back-to-back European Championship final defeats in 2020 and 2024 had left scar tissue that this generation carried into every major tournament since. A World Cup final would have gone a long way toward finally silencing the narrative that this remarkably talented group simply couldn't get over the line. For Argentina, this was about defending what they already held, world champions. Since Qatar in 2022, Lionel Scaloni's side arrived in Atlanta attempting something no side had managed in over 6 decades, becoming the first team to retain the World Cup since Brazil accomplished the feat back-to-back in 1958 and 1962. And they arrived there the way they'd arrived at every stage of this tournament. Not comfortably, but through sheer force of will. A Cape Verde side that had pushed them to extra time, a furious comeback against Egypt after trailing 2-0, a Swiss side that had taken them to extra time again, even after being reduced to 10 men. This Argentina team did not know how to win easily. Every match had been a survival story, and somehow, every single time, they had found a way through. There was something almost mythic building around this Argentina side by the time they reached Atlanta, a growing sense among neutrals that this group simply refused to lose, regardless of the circumstances stacked against them. Scaloni himself had spoken in the build-up about his squad's rare ability to raise its level precisely when backed into a corner, a trait not every talented team possesses. Talent alone rarely explains 4 consecutive close calls turning out the same way. At some point, it becomes a pattern, and patterns start to feel like inevitability. And then there was Messi. 39 years old, the greatest player of his generation, standing on the brink of a 3rd World Cup final appearance, a feat matched in tournament history only by Brazil's Cafu. Remarkably, despite a career that has spanned nearly every corner of the football world, Wednesday marked the first time Messi had ever faced England in a competitive match. 20 years of English football writers wondering what that particular collision would look like, and they were finally about to find out. For a player whose career many assumed had reached its natural conclusion after lifting the trophy in Qatar, this tournament had become something else entirely, one more chapter nobody expected, written by a man who, by his own admission afterward, still felt he had more to give. From the opening whistle, it was clear this wasn't going to be decided by elegant football. It was, in the words used by more than one observer inside the stadium, closer to a street fight than a football match. Bodies hit the turf within the first minute. Tackles flew in late and hard. Both benches were on their feet almost immediately, appealing for cards, appealing for protection, appealing for control that the referee seemed reluctant to fully impose. That referee, Ismail Elfath, carried his own piece of history into the match, the first American official ever to take charge of a World Cup semifinal. He had his hands full from the very first exchange. Elliot Anderson picked up an early booking for a crude foul on Messi, a signal of the tone England intended to set physically, daring Argentina to try to play through it. And for a long stretch, neither side could. The football itself, when it briefly broke out between collisions, was scrappy and rhythmless. By the first hydration break, the two teams had combined for 8 fouls between them and had not managed a single shot on target. It was not the free-flowing, star-studded exhibition neutrals might have hoped for. It was something rawer, two proud football nations, laden with history and grievance, trying to physically impose themselves before either dared to actually play. Argentina's approach became clear as the half wore on. Pressure England high. Deny their more technical players time on the ball, and force mistakes through sheer relentlessness. It worked in patches, disrupting England's rhythm, but it also meant Argentina themselves struggled to generate anything meaningful going forward. Chances were rare. Half openings were snuffed out before they could develop into anything resembling danger. Nicolas Otamendi and Christian Romero anchored an Argentine backline that matched England's physicality challenge for challenge, refusing to be bullied out of a semi-final that so many had expected to be decided by flair rather than force. England, for their part, looked to play through Bellingham's craft and Kane's movement, searching for the kind of clinical moment that could turn a bruising, low-quality half into 3 points banked toward the final. Bellingham in particular tried to drop deeper than usual to escape Argentina's pressing traps, hunting for pockets of time to pick a pass forward toward Kane or the wide threats of Gordon and Rodgers. But Argentina's defense, organized, physical, unwilling to concede an inch, matched every English probe with a body in the way. By halftime, the scoreline read exactly what the football had produced: nothing. 0-0, A match still searching for its story, two teams that had spent 45 minutes testing each other's resolve rather than each other's quality. Both sets of players trudged toward the tunnel, having earned a yellow card apiece before the whistle, a fair reflection of a half defined more by combat than by craft. In the stands, the noise had never once dipped. Every tackle, every 50-50 ball, every disputed decision met with a wall of sound from whichever end of the stadium felt aggrieved. But anyone who had followed Argentina's run through this tournament knew better than to assume the story was over. This team had trailed against Egypt and come back. This team had needed extra time against Cape Verde and against Switzerland. If this match was going to be decided in a moment of pure drama, the early signs suggested it would arrive late, and it would very likely arrive through the boot or the mind of Lionel Messi. Nobody inside that stadium, regardless of which end they were sitting in, truly believed this match would stay quiet for the full 90 minutes. Television audiences around the world tuning into this semifinal knew they were watching more than just a football match. Broadcasters in both countries had built entire pre-match programs around the historical weight of the fixture, dusting off archive footage from 1986, from 1998, reminding viewers just how rarely these two nations cross paths and just how much tends to happen when they do. For the neutral fan, it was simply box office two attacking talents of the highest order, Messi and Bellingham, Kane and the Argentine front line, all wrapped inside a fixture soaked in decades of history. As the second half approached, the tactical picture remained delicately balanced. Tuchel had options on his bench to freshen his attack if the deadlock continued, while Scaloni's substitutes, including a certain Lautaro Martínez, held in reserve rather than starting, offered late-game firepower that had already proven decisive earlier in the tournament. Whatever was coming, both benches appeared to sense that patience, not panic, would decide who advanced to Sunday's final in New Jersey. The second half opened with the same physical edge that had defined the first, but gradually the football began to breathe. Both sides pushed higher up the pitch, willing to take more risks, sensing that a single moment of quality might now be enough to decide the entire match. That moment arrived in the 55th minute, and it belonged to England. Morgan Rogers, driving down the flank with real purpose, whipped in a pinpoint delivery toward the back post. Anthony Gordon arrived exactly on cue, meeting it and finishing with the kind of composure that made the Three Lions end of the stadium erupt into pure delirium. England led, and for the first time all night, the fixture that had promised chaos finally had a clean, clear story. England ahead, one goal from a first World Cup final in 60 years. The goal transformed the match. England, sensing history within reach, dropped into a more compact defensive shape, content to absorb pressure and search for moments on the counter. Tuchel's side had ridden their luck for large parts of the first half, and now, with the lead secured, the calculation shifted entirely toward protecting what they had. Bellingham dropped deeper to help shield the back line, while Kane found himself increasingly isolated up front, starved of the service that had looked promising in flashes before the goal. For a stretch of nearly 15 minutes, that plan worked precisely as intended. England soaked up pressure, cleared their lines under duress, and looked every bit like a team that had rehearsed exactly this scenario, nursing a slender advantage against a heavyweight opponent, daring them to find an answer. The English end of the stadium grew louder with every passing minute, sensing that history 60 years in the making was edging closer with every ticking second of the clock. Argentina, meanwhile, did exactly what this team has done at every stage of this tournament when pushed to the brink. They poured forward. Wave after wave of pressure crashed against an England defense that had suddenly discovered its resolve at the exact moment it mattered most. Alexis Mac Allister came desperately close on more than one occasion, a thumping header that crashed off the inside of the post, and later, after being teed up by a driving run, another effort that Everton and England goalkeeper Jordan Pickford somehow kept out. Pickford, in fact, produced the two most important saves of his international career in the space of a few second-half minutes. First, denying Nico Gonzalez after the Argentine midfielder connected cleanly with a pinpoint Messi cross in the 69th minute. Then, 7 minutes later, throwing himself across goal to keep out Mac Allister after the Liverpool midfielder had already struck the woodwork once that half. Twice, England's goalkeeper stood as the only thing between Argentina and an equalizer that seemed, to everyone watching, only a matter of time. But time was exactly what began working against England. As the clock ticked past the 70-minute mark and into the final quarter hour, Tuchel's side sat progressively deeper, increasingly passive, absorbing pressure rather than looking to add a second goal that would have made the game safe. It's a pattern England had lived through before, not seizing control when in front, inviting the storm rather than ending the game outright. And against this particular Argentina side, in this particular tournament, that hesitation would prove fatal. The equalizer arrived in the 85th minute, and it was pure quality. Enzo Fernández, who moments earlier had seen an effort tipped over the crossbar, collected the ball roughly 20 yards from goal, took a touch to create half a yard of space, and bent a stunning strike beyond Pickford and into the corner of the net. Mercedes-Benz Stadium detonated. Argentine flags rippled across half the arena. Players sprinted toward the corner in celebration, and for the second time in this tournament alone, Fernandez had delivered a defining goal at the moment his team needed it most, a mirror image of the stoppage time winner he'd produced against Egypt in the round of 16. Level at 1 apiece. With England suddenly reeling and extra time looming on the horizon, the momentum belonged entirely to Argentina. And Messi, at 39 years old, was about to write one final chapter into this remarkable night. In the second minute of stoppage time, with England pushing every available body forward in one last desperate search for a winner of their own, Argentina broke. Messi, picking the ball up with the composure of a player who had waited his entire career for exactly this kind of moment against exactly this opponent, drove forward and delivered a perfectly weighted cross toward the far post. Substitute Lautaro Martínez, who had entered the match with instructions to make an impact exactly like this one, rose above his marker and headed the ball into the net. Lautaro Martínez had scored the winner. Argentina led 2-1 in the second minute of second half stoppage time. There would be no time for an English response. The scenes that followed were pure catharsis for an Argentine squad that had once again stared down elimination and refused to blink. Players collapsed onto the turf in disbelief. Staff sprinted from the technical area and in the stands. The Argentine end of Mercedes-Benz Stadium produced a wall of noise that seemed to shake the entire structure. For England, the opposite emotion swept through their end entirely. Players sinking to the turf, hands on heads, a familiar and painful silence settling over a fan base that has now watched this exact story play out across multiple major tournaments. When the final whistle sounded moments later, the numbers told a story that felt almost inevitable in hindsight. This was the fourth consecutive knockout match in which Argentina had been pushed to the very edge before finding a way through after Cape Verde, after Egypt, after Switzerland, now after England. And remarkably, Argentina became the first team in World Cup history to score multiple winning goals in second half stoppage time across a single tournament, a testament to a squad that simply refuses to accept defeat until the referee's whistle makes it official. In the immediate aftermath, England captain Harry Kane spoke candidly about the collapse, acknowledging that his side had done well for the opening hour before losing their grip on the match once Argentina turned up the pressure. Tuchel echoed the sentiment, conceding that his team had grown too passive after taking the lead, unable to regain control of possession as Argentina's pressure mounted. For a golden generation that has now suffered final stage heartbreak across multiple tournaments, back-to-back European Championship final defeats before this latest semifinal collapse. The wait for a first World Cup final since 1966 stretches on, painfully once again. There is a particular cruelty to how this England exit unfolded. This wasn't a team overwhelmed from the first whistle or picked apart by a moment of individual brilliance from open play. This was a team that led for 30 minutes, that stood one goal from history for the better part of half an hour, only to watch that lead slip away in the cruelest possible fashion, not through one late blow, but through two, delivered 7 minutes apart, both fashioned by the same 39-year-old genius. It's the kind of defeat that will be picked apart by English football writers for years. Another data point in a growing conversation about whether this remarkably talented generation is capable of getting over the line when it matters most. For Argentina, there was no time for reflection, only preparation for what comes next. Scaloni, speaking afterward, credited his squad's ability to elevate its performance precisely when circumstances turn most difficult, a quality this team has now demonstrated across 4 straight knockout matches. In an emotional post-game moment, midfielder Giovanni Lo Celso, who hadn't featured in the match itself, unfurled a banner referencing the Falkland Islands as Argentine players celebrated on the pitch, a gesture that instantly reignited the geopolitical undertones that had shadowed this fixture from the moment the draw was made. Messi himself, in the moments after full-time, reflected on his team's remarkable resilience across this tournament, insisting that Argentina remains the benchmark in world football regardless of outside doubts. For a player who many assumed had already written the final chapter of his international career after Qatar in 2022, Sunday's final represents something extraordinary, a 3rd World Cup final appearance, matched in tournament history only by Brazil's legendary Cafu, and a genuine chance to become just the 2nd nation in over 60 years to defend the World Cup title. Lautaro Martínez, the match winner, could barely contain his emotion in the moments afterward, describing the goal as something close to a premonition, a feeling he'd shared with teammates before the match that he would find the net if given the chance off the bench. It's the kind of storyline that only seems to follow this Argentina squad around. The right player, arriving at the right moment, delivering exactly when the team needs it most, tournament after tournament, match after match. That final now awaits at New York, New Jersey Stadium on Sunday, where Argentina will face a Spanish side that dismantled France 2-0 in the other semifinal, European champions against South American champions, in what promises to be a final built on contrasting philosophies. Spain, patient, structural, defensively immaculate throughout this tournament, having conceded barely a goal across 6 matches. Argentina, resilient, dramatic, seemingly incapable of losing once a match reaches its final act, having now required late drama in 4 consecutive knockout rounds. Something has to give. The broader historical stakes could hardly be higher. No nation has defended the World Cup since Brazil managed it in 1962. Argentina, with 3 stars on their crest already, would move level with Germany's total and edge closer to Brazil's record 5 if they complete the job on Sunday. For Messi, it would mean bookending a career that already includes every individual and collective honor the sport has to offer, with one final, almost unthinkable achievement: back-to-back World Cup titles, delivered at an age when most of his generation have long since retired from international football altogether. That's the full story of the night Argentina refused to die again. If you want the breakdown of Sunday's final between Argentina and Spain, the moment it happens, the goals, the drama, the history on the line, make sure you're following, because this tournament isn't done writing its story yet, and neither are we.